What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Cowboy Kitchen. Today I'm going to show you how to cook a dry-aged steak. What's the difference between cooking dry-aged beef and fresh beef? Well, not much, really. With a dry-aged piece of beef, you don't really want to overcook it because it's already low in moisture. So there you have a beautiful bone-in certified Angus beef ribeye. You can see kind of that brown color by the bone. That's actually has a lot of flavor. I didn't want to cut that out. It tastes delicious. And that fat has that kind of that brownish hue. That's really delicious. So a little trick I like to use is to season on top of a rack. That allows excess salt to fall down, and it allows the right amount of salt to stick to the meat. Now, if you're health conscious about salt or you have high blood pressure, you're probably not going to want to eat a bone-in ribeye that has tons of fat, okay? But this is a special occasion, and you want to make sure that it's going to turn out as good as you possibly can. And in order to do that, you have to season aggressively. Cover all sides with salt and pepper. Most of it's going to fall off the rack and or into the pan, but you want to make sure that it's properly seasoned to get that meat tasting as good as it possibly can. After seasoning all sides, that's what your steak should look like. I added just a little bit more pepper because I didn't think I had enough. Okay, so now on to the aromatics. Aromatics basically are just things that are going to make your steak taste good while it's cooking. The classic aromatic is going to be garlic, thyme, and butter. I picked the thyme leaves, and with the garlic, I lightly smash them with the heel of my hand. No need to take the garlic out of the skin. It'll work just fine in the skin. Now that your steak is seasoned, it's time to sear that baby off. Now for a pan, I like to use something thick that retains heat. If you use a thin pan, you're really going to just burn your steak and then have an undercooked side. It's not a good thing at all. You want a thick pan, so I'm using cast iron. You can use carbon steel, you can use stainless steel, but you just want something that's going to retain the heat. Once you add your steak in, you don't want that temperature to drop too much. You want to make sure you get that nice crust. And that's exactly what this pan does. I think it's like a $20 cast iron pan. Really cheap, durable. And the fat that I'm using today is duck fat. I think duck fat gives you the best flavor, but if you don't have duck fat or you don't like duck fat, you can use any oil with a high flash point. The flash point of an oil is the maximum allowable temperature. Okay, so I started by searing the fat side of the steak. What that does is render out some of that excess fat. It crisps it up, and it also adds a little beef fat to the pan, so when you sear both sides, you're cooking in beef fat and duck fat. So that's going to be really delicious. So I'm going medium to medium-high heat. I want nice color on that fat cap, and as you can see, I'm getting nice color. That looks pretty good. If your heat's too high, you're just going to burn the fat, and it's still going to be raw in the center. So you just want to go medium to medium-high. Now it's time to sear the side. Now let's be honest, I'm basically just pan frying this. There's so much oil in that pan, and that's exactly what you want. And the reason why you want that is because that's going to give you the maximum color. Maillard reaction, that's the dark crust on the steak. If you don't have enough oil, you won't get good color. Use a lot of oil. And there you can see after frying it for a few minutes, it has a really beautiful crust. And it's dark brown, almost getting black. That's a beautiful sear. That's exactly what you want. You can see that everything's really, really, really caramelized. All that Maillard reaction is going on. That's beautiful. That's exactly what you want. So I'm searing the other side, doing the exact same thing. Now with a big steak like this, you don't have to worry about overcooking it in the pan. And that's a beautiful thing because that means that you can get all sides really, really dark and crusty, and it won't be overcooked in the center. Now with a steak like this, the tip of the steak and the cap is going to be a little bit more well done. There's really no way around that unless you sous vide it and you don't give it that nice crust. But I will take a deep, dark crust over a perfectly red steak any day of the week, okay? This is still going to be perfectly cooked in the center. Just those end pieces are going to be a little bit more cooked, but that flavor on those end pieces is amazing. The final part of the steak that I want to get color on is just that tip right above the bone. And now I'm draining the dark oil. You don't want to baste with that dark oil. It doesn't have good flavor. So put that in a Pyrex pan, set it aside, add your butter, add your garlic, sprinkle in a little bit of thyme leaf, and now what we're going to do is baste. And basting is just spooning hot fat on something. Now this butter is going to be melted. It's going to get that garlicky and thyme flavor, and it's one of the best smells you can imagine in the world. It is so delicious. And what you're going to want to do is just baste a little bit, keep it on low heat, flip your steak, baste a little bit more, take your time. It's really fun. So when I'm basting all over the meat, especially along the bone, because the bone needs the most time to cook. I'm not really trying to baste along the edges, because those edges are already kind of going to be medium well. You want to baste right kind of by that bone. And you can see that butter just crisping up that meat, imparting its flavor of the garlic and thyme. That's going to give you wonderful flavor. Now when you spend a lot of money on a piece of meat, you want to cook it right. For the temps, 110 for rare, 120 for medium rare, 130 for medium. This one was about 96 degrees, so I popped it in a 350 degree oven for about 5 minutes. Now I'm going to temp it again after I give it a nice beautiful baste. And this temperature was a little higher. It was about 117. So this is perfect if you like medium rare. But I went another few minutes just because I wanted that medium, because that's what my wife likes. So I popped it in the oven for another 3 minutes. Total cooking time for this steak in a 350 degree oven after I seared it was about 8 minutes. Not very long at all. So the important thing to do once it's cooked is rest it. That's that same rack that I use for seasoning. Put it on that rack and let it rest. Okay? That's going to allow sufficient airflow underneath the steak. It's not going to steam because it has that airflow, and it's going to rest and cook evenly even after it's out of the pan. So I added a little bit more of that beautiful fat, a little bit more of that garlic, and seasoned lightly with salt. After resting for about 30 minutes, it's time to cut into it. That's what you want your steak to look like. Beautiful crust, glistening with delicious juices and fats. Now I'm going to give it a slice right along the bone, and then I'm going to give it a slice right along that fat cap. I'm going to rotate 90 degrees, and then I'm going to slice straight across. You can cut this any way you like, or you don't even have to slice it. This is just easier to eat for people because it has, a few slices of the center cut, a few fatty cuts, the best of both worlds. So this is an easy way to do it. And as you can see, it's nice and pink throughout. It's rested. It's not bleeding all over the place. If your steak is bleeding all over the place, you did not let it rest long enough. You need to let it rest a long time. Once you touch it, you don't want it to be hot. You want it to be just nice and warm. And you can see that nice, beautiful pink throughout. That's a beautiful medium, and that's exactly what we like. I'm cutting up the fatty parts. This is the cap of the ribeye. And then I'm also going to take off the meat from the bone. And that bone is just money. Look at that, so delicious, so fatty. That dry aged funky flavor is just going all around my house right now. It is so good. And that dry aged fat is unbelievably good. So I like to eat it. You can get rid of it if you don't like it, or you can give it to your dog, or you can cook vegetables with it. There's a lot of uses for fat, but for this, I'm just going to kind of slice it up into little chunks, and I'm also going to put it on the plate as well. And you can see that fat is a little bit yellow. That's coming from the age. Okay, so to plate it up, I'm putting that outside kind of overcooked piece on the bottom, and then those thick, beautiful center cut pieces right in the center of the plate. I'm plating this up family style, but you can plate it up any way you'd like. Perhaps individual portions might be easier for you. I'm going to add that bone, and I'm going to add those fatty pieces to the plate. Well, I hope you guys learned something. I hope you guys have a little more confidence cooking dry-aged meat. It's definitely worth the extra money, especially for a special occasion. Stay tuned for more videos, and thank you guys for watching. Happy eating.